All right, let's delve into our next conversation on the program. Nigeria's property market has suffered, continued to suffer a significant setback and staggering to meet up with the ever-increasing operating cost due to the rising inflation on the market. Well, we shall be accessing this sector now, looking at the issue at the moment, and of course, looking at with the disturbing economic scenario in Nigeria at the moment, businesses in all sectors of Nigerian ailing economy, including the property market, have suffered a significant setback with over 20.7% of inflation in the market and an exchange rate of around 875 naira to the US dollars. How worse can it get? And so let's get into the conversation as we look at this. Mr. Babatokwe Agutasolo, MD and Senior Project Manager at King Builder Limited. He joins us virtually. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Let's start by assessing the performance of Nigeria's property market today. So where are we?
Presently now, just based on what you have just said now, the inflation rate has actually, it has affected everything. And one thing we should understand is that real estate is an edge against inflation. But a wise man will always say, the best time to buy a property is 10 years ago. Another time to buy a property is now. But if you want to buy a property now, bearing in mind the surge in currency, the inflation rate, there is a way to buy a property now. But what we have experienced so far is that we discovered that the inflation rate has affected a lot of things. It has affected the building materials, it has affected the labor on site, and it has affected even the way people buy. Because let's assume you have 100 million naira now and you can buy a property, let's say 10 property, you can buy 10 property for 100 million. Now, that is, let's say 2 years ago. But now, based on the cost of inflation, we discover, according to calculation, the increase, the inflation has affected the property market to the extent that the percentage of increment in the property market is more than 30%. It means you can't buy 10 property with your 100 million naira anymore. The max you can do is that you can only afford, based on it will be 13 million. So it will take you 13 million to buy a property. The max you can buy is you can buy 6 properties.
Well, I think Mr. Gotasolo was trying to explain the impact of inflation rate, the high inflation rate in the Nigeria's property market, and of course how the value has gone up. And even with 100 million naira, you cannot afford more properties now. Now, continue on that note, Babatokwe. Go ahead.
Okay. So this has affected a lot of things based on the cost of material. Now, let me just give us instances. Two years ago, that is 2020, before the pandemic, before the EndSARS in Nigeria, we discovered that bag of cement is like 2,000 plus. But now, presently, a bag of cement is about 4,200. That is almost 100% increment in the price of purchase. And we have a lot of things, and I'm sure you know that cement is one of the major things you use in the construction industry. At least 30 to 40% of what you use to build your house is cement. So that has affected the buying and the challenges in the property market also.
Just before you move to the challenges, Babatokwe, just before you move to the challenges, well, with the inflation rate, which has gone high as 20%, 20.7% in the last report released by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, we saw that that's the figure at the moment, and perhaps it could go, higher than that at the moment. So, talk to us about how the sector is surviving and growing amidst this rising inflation rate.
Okay, now this is the way the sector is surviving. The sector is surviving. We discover that we have a lot of foreign buyers. So any real estate developer who want to thrive more in the real estate industry of today, you need foreign investors, because based on the inflation has cut across the prices of food, the prices of goods, the prices of services. Now, we are not saying inflation is limited to Nigeria alone. It's not limited to Nigeria alone, but it is not as bad as this in other countries. And the reason why it is like this is because 80% of what we use in building is imported. That is why it's really eating deep into the Nigerian property market. So for any investor, for any developer who want to thrive more in the property industry, you need to, one, invite foreign investor. That is number one. Number two, you need to be flexible in your property price, flexible in the term. You can't do a short-term investment or a short-term project anymore. Your project must be a long-term one. So there should be minimum of 2-year project.
So let me quickly come in. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So how do you, for the developers, how do you recoup your investment or get the return on your investment? Do you transfer it to your customers, consumers? Because as you said, that the inflation has made things, very difficult. And so how do you manage that, the cost of building or developing vis-a-vis what you push to your consumers or customers, as it were?
Okay, definitely the increment, the rise will definitely affect the cost of the property. The increase in price of raw materials, the increase in price of building materials.
Because just a moment, because the reason why I ask is that there's a saying or a given that real estate never run at a loss. Either way, the price keeps appreciating, that the value keeps adding up. But in this case, you are saying that inflation, the high inflation rate has made things difficult for operators. So how do you manage that? Do you push the cost to, the final consumers, these off-takers who come and say, okay, I want to buy, this plan off you? Is that what it is?
I can't hear anything. I think the network is hanging.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was just trying to ask you, how do you manage that cost of inflation? How do you factor it into, the property itself before you can sell? How do you manage it?
Definitely, we need to factor in the rise into the cost of the property, because the developer or the investor will not want to go home with loss. He needs to go home with profit. So the cost is factored in. Into the cost of the property.
Okay. Now let's get into other conversation now. Just a quickly. Okay. Let's look at new trends and opportunities amidst this rising inflation. Of course, people are still getting into the business, and more people are still buying, properties or till tomorrow. Yeah. So what are the opportunities? What are the new trends here?
Okay, the new trend is we have what we call crowdfunding. That's number one. And one thing we discover also is that a lot of people are now investing in international property market because they want to enjoy positive cash flow and foreign exchange appreciation. Those are the new trend. And another thing developers are doing now is that developers are now more focusing on JV property development. There's what we call JV, that is joint venture. And another one is what we call off-plan sales. Developers are now going into off-plan sales, getting money before investing in a property, getting buyers. There's what we call off-plan sales. The property has not been built, the property is not ready. But what developers do now is that they will have a plan of how this property will look like, what this property we have, the futures, the infrastructures, and every other thing.
Okay. So we understand that yes, more people, more investors are coming into the markets on a daily basis. So how huge is the market, the property market in Nigeria, going forward? Let's look at the opportunities here. I mean, if you can give us a figure with the size of the market in Nigeria.
The truth is that we have 25 million housing deficit in Nigeria, and the demand is high on a daily basis. And I will always say this, that as far as Nigeria is concerned today, the supply will never meet the demand based on the cost of inflation, because the cost of the inflation in the country has affected a lot of people to even purchase a property, because a salary earner hasn't received increment in salary. But the cost of inflation has eaten deep into the property market to the extent that the price of property has increased. So he won't be able to afford that property. So that will be a tug of war for a lot of people. Even the rich also are also complaining. So it is not about the middle income earner alone. It is not about the poor income earner alone. It is now about everybody. And just like what you said, the property market, as for the past 20 years, there is always housing deficit in Nigeria. 20 years ago, it was 16 million, but now it's now 25 million. I imagine what will happen in the next five years if this trend is what we are still having. So there will always be housing deficits. So what we advise a lot of people to do is that, number one, they should buy distressed property. That is number one. Number two is that they should move outside the urban area, because a lot of people want to stay in Lagos. Lagos is overpopulated.
That's right.
And property in Lagos will continue to rise. So it is better people move as far as moving to Ogun State. If you can even move to your state, you can move. You can get cheaper properties in all these locations. But the only issue which the government needs to come in is that we need infrastructures. Aside from infrastructures, there should be policy, because we have a lot of challenges in the property market, which is affecting both the buyer and the seller.
So what are those challenges?
The seller cannot
because of our time.
To loan.
Yes, because of our time, let's quickly look at these challenges, and of course, where do we need to put these challenges to, in terms of conversation around finding solution to these challenges, quickly, so that we can wrap up now. Okay,
quick one. Number one is that property registration is expensive. To register a property is expensive. I was speaking to my lawyer some few days ago, and he told me I went to court, and he was saying something that 60% of court cases is based on
just because of our time. Just maybe one statement can wrap it up so that we can go now. We are pressed for time, really.
Okay. No, the second challenge is high cost of material.
Okay.
The third one is there is no finance.
Okay.
There's no access to mortgage.
I think we just have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Mr. Babatope. Thank you so much for your time on the program. We appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. All right.